first Genesis album I heard was Genesis Live. It had a interesting costume on the cover, a story, a vignette that was somewhat unremarkable but interesting enough to keep my attention. The lyrics were civilized enough that I enjoyed time well spent. If you ever seen a slave movie or a Tarzan movie, you're probably familiar with a scene where a man is trying to escape traffickers, slavers, and a net falls on him or blocks surrounds him under his arms and puts him in a rack, and he's coiled up in chains and made a slave, a captive. You know, the old Samson movies are like that. And you understand what Peter Gabriel and Ringo Starr were planning to do to me when they had a dacoit suggest I listen to Genesis Live. They had this Jewish cartel in the neighborhood who were setting me up into the rack and slavery of the notion that I could have saved John Lennon. It was supposed to be what Frank Herbert called a might have been that was past bearing. It's the power of unreality and British hypocrisy. Be that as it may, Israelis weren't really the only aggressors in the matter. The English gave them the logistics and information just as they did during the Gaza Armageddon. In fact, there's a breakaway faction who were assigned to mourn Gaza so they could look like the conscience overlooking the prior operation, to which Gaza was sloppy seconds, as they like to say. It's the Harvard Jew boys like to say. So the British were controlling the logistics of the plan to harness me into this contraption. I went to The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway with a member of the Israeli Air Force who was then my age. And interestingly, we waited for a statue that never came to life, thinking it was Peter Gabriel when the concert ended. He used the statue himself in a maddening Houdini trick during the course of the show. I was there to pick up with him for a moment or two. And I talked to Steve Hackett, the guitarist of that band. So I grew up, getting Zappa's autograph. Mick Ronson even kissed me when he gave me his autograph. I was backstage, is what they called it, a couple of times at some of these shows. As for being a member of the aristocracy, George Bush is so insecure. He attacked me as a 9-year-old to make sure that I was never associated with the ship because I was in public schools. My mother was marching against the Vietnam War. Christ, these infamous people in power are so funny. Even though they're deadly, they're so so ferociously childish. Of course, it's not really funny or clever when it comes to Toon. Toon is really out there. He's an orb from the mothership UFO or something. I hate to wax that laconic, but The idea is preposterous. The business about could have saved John Lennon. Gail Burstyn wrote those letters, and she appears on Robert Fripp's God Save the Queen, in likeness at least. She's a pretty distinctive looking likeness, which you might find a little bit odd if you're normal. And they didn't, the game was to keep it quiet by getting a detective service who said, if we can prove that Eno's theorem, that Amadori Goto, like Prodigy, would have identified what was going on and stopped John Lennon from pulling his Houdini, we get the Smithsonian award. Meanwhile, they just sit there and ignore what I have to say and let the museums get ripped off. They let the museum get ripped off for $8 million because they didn't want to credit my intelligence about the person who was doing it. They wanted to wait for someone else to provide intelligence because they didn't dare allow my intelligence about the matter be heard. And aren't they special that they understand how he did it? They understand how he did it so intimately, it sounds like they're bragging of having helped him. You know, Walter Hodorowski pimps this storyline that I asked Pierre Elliott, what does it mean to lie? Because I was trying to insinuate that I didn't ever lie. And that I thought I was magic in giving back the postcard to Robert Fripp that he sent me. Well, John Schulman had a hookademic that matched their minds. He showed me an erased and rewritten signature of Tolkien. It said, aha, patent forgery. I was just thinking, it looks like some stunt of yours, but I couldn't make out why you would be doing that. Oh, the hookademics of Hodorowski, to prove he would never do that. That's exactly what they said after 911 when they asked why they did it, to prove we would never do that. So are they proving they would never kill John Lennon? They didn't. He pulled a Houdini. He went along with the whole thing. And when I point out the evidence for that and the logic of that, they say that makes me all the more clearly to blame. Shocking, huh? Peter Gabriel and Robert Fripp have a combination lock on the whole thing. And David Bowie was around too, working with Buckley and Reagan. Martin Scorsese, here's one for the FBI. Mel Gibson and Peter Gabriel and Martin Scorsese wanted me to be JC. They wanted to inject me and watch me die. So they tortured me to get it out of their system to see if they could. And Seattle said, no, we'll poison you in the mouth in the lunchroom. And you know what's really funny about all this stuff? I actually loved King Crimson. I hitchhiked from Pittsburgh to St. Louis just to hear one of those assholes play in the summer of 1979. He got a hard on for my girlfriend. Started making up these really wild stories to explain his own jigsaw puzzle as my doing. Can you imagine me, Jimmy Curry, the 15-year-old, understanding, much less writing, the personas subjected to successive degradations of the ex-motive, as did Greg Carl. Papaleo's message with a message from Greg Carl. Oh, there are so many human dramas like that. Getting the better of my mirth if possible. The Israelis don't mean well. There's no language word for what they're doing. They're coming to unglue every single standard of dignity that exists between men. Donald Trump is just one of their creations. They meet anything that has the potential to reform with counter discipline, hatred, cruelty. And the fact that it hurts you to man up about that and to face what they have become and what they're doing to innocent people, to the heritage of Christianity, to Western civilization, to, for God's sakes, their own legacy and names. The fact that it hurts you to face that shows what a grip their power has over you, because you need to shake it off and face it. It hurts me a great deal to have to say that about the Israelis. I didn't go to the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway with a member of the Israeli Air Force unwillingly. He was my friend, or so I thought. You have to understand what they've done is wrong. And if they can't understand what they've done is wrong, you have to disempower your relationship towards them and stop feeding into their ability to do it. Congress has to grow up. Congress is supposed to be adults with responsibility, representing the legacy of our intelligent life, our legacy as human beings. It's not just about war. It's about maintaining the administration of society. It's certainly not about anti-Semitism. You'd have to have a lot of gall to call me an anti-Semite. I am not at war with Israel. But what they've done is scaring the devil out of me. It's like an artificial intelligence program. You know, I rather liked black and white TV days when we would have lunch and go back to school, in theory, to study. But they surrounded the school, the road warriors from Westmoreland County. The road warriors in their hot cars took me to the car show. They wouldn't let me go to school. They kidnapped and tortured me. They gassed me, and it turned out to be a mind-bending pun from Roger Waters in Princeton. The crank utopia of the rock world at work in their playground, like Ben Gvir and his playground in Lebanon, hurting innocent people for a gurgle, a snicker, and a British note of approval. That's not what I heard when I first heard Genesis Live. I heard classical music put to nursery rhymes with a slightly malefic overtone that you would expect from rock psychedelics. I don't mean to be affirmative of the psychedelics that were being plied by Wattmaker, Cyril Wecht, and others in neurobehavioral neurohypnotic research, like the Mackenzies. It's a sardonic thing to tell the world all this stuff which was just passed around the sidewalks of the fraternities. The sides and laughs and makeshift vomit bag serials about who was sleeping with who, what school you were going to go to back in junior high when I knew Mackenzie. It's sad to say that there's nothing even trying to get better help and information to the children. The Army had made me a sacrificial unit as a Pittsburgh public school child, and the NAACP were impatiently on their phones and radios waiting for the results in the political investment portfolio. All of those people should be ashamed. Everybody knows what competent administration is about. We see it in principle every day. We see competent administration in Catholic hospitals, in children's schools, in theories of government, in administrative headquarters of community colleges. And we get turned into this by the guidance of Hollywood and a couple $1 trillion pimps of capitalism. Let our food go bad, our water turns rotten, our trees wilt and wither, our children are forced to look at us in shame and disbelief and despair. But oh, there's a breakaway crowd in British media who mourn Gaza. We will come through. We will prevail. We will be all right someday. Deep in our hearts, we do believe we will be normal and all right someday. We will be spared the worst. There's nothing wrong with believing in Jesus. His message is cool. But to believe in the miracles to the point of the pseudo science fiction of the apocalypse, wanting to make it ring out as though it's Radio Free Europe, is the gutter sniping of the Italian futurist fascist mob, wreaking havoc. It's the wilding scene. It's the wild bunch on the make for menace and destruction. And cosmic flowers of exploding bombs. It's absurd. People seem to prefer being absurd to being responsible.